This is the Hunter England house, which was built in Union County, Georgia, by John Hunter between 1832 and 1834, using poplar logs. Do you see the wooden shutters over the windows? This is definitely a house from the past. And it is a unique experience to see what life was like during the 1800s. Could you imagine having a house like this today? It may look very basic today to us as we look at it, but think about this in the past. It definitely meant a lot to individuals to have a home like this and not have to have a small, tiny home. Here they had a fireplace, which was made out of rocks, probably from the creeks. A very basic roofing structure here. Definitely would make for a chilly home in the winters. As such, they would have their beds in the living room, oftentimes by the fireplace to stay warm. A lot of times they would cook on the fireplace as well. The perks of having a fireplace in your home and those large wooden beams across the ceiling would be that you could dry your beans from your garden to make leather breeches. You could dry your peppers and string them. So many different things you could do here. Here you can see a lot of the old timey tools that were used in the kitchens, the basic chairs that they had. They would often have a root cellar under the floor, as you can see here. A wooden trunk to put their clothing and belongings in. Very, very basic items. Things that we often take for granted today. So let's continue touring this beautiful Appalachian homestead. And I'm curious to see how many things you can identify in here. I do know what a lot of this stuff is from stories from my grandparents telling me about their lives growing up in the past. Things that they used and how they are different today. Here, this is how they used to wash their clothes and wring the water out. Then they would hang their clothes on the clothesline. I remember seeing this done during my childhood using the clothesline. It does look very basic, but think about the past. How proud these individuals must have been to have a home like this. Very basic wooden door. And look at that lock. Could you imagine using something like that today? All of their sheds, and of course, they had to have a garden. So now let's venture off of the porch and go see what else we can find. Looking at this garden, it might bring up some memories If you have watched any of my other videos, you have seen my garden. And you may compare it to this garden. The corn, green beans. It was the simple crops like that people would grow so that they could preserve it. Whether they dried their corn and saved the seed for next year, enjoyed the fresh green beans, but strung some up on string and dried like we saw earlier for later use, or they canned them. Things back then were grown for a purpose and used to feed their large families. There's definitely nothing wasted when you grow up in Appalachia. Everything is either enjoyed fresh, straight from the garden, where everyone pitches in, lends a helping hand, and creates a bountiful harvest. Or things are dried and preserved for later use throughout the year, well beyond the gardening season. So here is another barn. Just looking in here brings back many memories of stories that my grandparents and parents have shared with me about life growing up when all of these farming implements, various tools and things of that nature were used. Here you can see items that were used for blacksmithing, maintaining those horseshoes for the horses on the farm was definitely important, especially if that was your farming resource, well before tractors were invented or used. Definitely so many old and unique tools that were used back then. Comparing them to today's tools is almost well beyond one's imagination. I hope you enjoyed touring the oldest dwelling here in Union County, Georgia. Definitely looking back at the past.